My dear friends, my name is Richard Langston. This year, I've turned 94. For most of my life, I stood before classrooms teaching history about empires that once rose to the peak of power, then gradually disappeared without a sound. I used to believe that if one had enough knowledge, enough logic, they could prepare for anything life might bring. But there is one thing that no book has ever mentioned. No chapter that teaches you how to face it when you begin to grow old. Old age doesn't arrive like a whirlwind. It comes quietly, as if only passing by. It slips into each breath, each turn of the head, each movement you used to think was nothing at all. You won't notice it right away, until one morning you lift your teacup and see your hand slightly tremble. You bend down to tie your shoelaces, then pause, unable to remember which foot you usually start with. And when you walk past the mirror, what stops you is not the wrinkles, but the eyes and the reflection, no longer resembling the strong man you've always remembered in your mind. Chapter 1. When the body no longer listens. I still remember very clearly the feeling of stepping outside the house every morning. The cool breeze brushing against my cheek, the sun just rising, and my legs moving without a second thought. They would carry me for miles, as if motion were instinct, not something I had to command. I never once thought I would fall. That kind of thing seemed to happen only to other people. Weaker people, older people. Not me. And yet one ordinary morning, I stood up from my chair and had to sit right back down. Not because I was dizzy, not because I was in pain, but because I wasn't sure I could keep my balance. From that moment on, every small action in the day became a kind of test. Each step was a quiet negotiation between intention and ability. Should I go upstairs now? Should I reach for that book or wait until someone comes by to help? Should I try to do this or just stay seated? What tires me most is not the pain. It's the hesitation. I used to act as soon as I thought of something. Now I think and then think again, even for things that used to be too small to notice. I remember once I dropped a thin book from my lap. I leaned forward to pick it up and lost my balance. I wasn't injured. No bleeding, no broken bones. But I sat on the floor for nearly 20 minutes. Not just because I couldn't stand up, but because my heart felt unsettled, confused, embarrassed, and mixed with a sadness that didn't quite have a name. I used to believe the body was the most loyal companion. When the mind grew tired, it stayed strong. When the spirit wavered, it carried me forward. But now, it feels more like an old machine, still running, but no longer precise. I have to walk slower when I go into the bathroom. Hold both railings when climbing the stairs. Sit down midway when folding laundry, something that used to take me just a few minutes. But what truly makes me pause is not weak legs or a sore back or stiff knees. It's the moment I realized, in my mind, I'm still the man I was at 40. I still think I can lift boxes, climb ladders, go on morning walks for 5 kilometers. But in the mirror, there's an old man with silver hair, his hands trembling as he tries to hold a glass of water. That feeling, it doesn't make me cry, but it does make me go still, much longer than I used to. Chapter 2. The Nameless Spaces. I live alone in a small house in northern New Hampshire. That house used to feel warm, not because of the fireplace, but because of the laughter. The laughter of my wife, her name was Elaine. The voices of our children when they were little, and the sound of tiny feet running across the porch each summer when the grandchildren came to visit. Now, the space is still the same, but the sound is different. Silence, not exactly sad, but quiet enough for me to hear the wind slipping through the window frame, and sometimes even the ticking of the clock like a soft reminder each minute is passing, gently. Elaine left me a few years ago. We walked together through life for 63 years, nearly an entire lifetime. Long enough for two people to become their own little world. I still remember everything about her. The way she made coffee in the morning, never using a metal spoon. The way she hummed while watering the plants out on the porch. The way she raised her eyebrows in mock annoyance whenever I forgot to close the sugar jar. All of those little things, one by one, have left this house. Quietly, just like the way old age comes. Her chair is still there, right across from mine in the living room. The fabric is worn, and there's a small tear on the armrest. The one she always said, "I'll stitch that up tomorrow." But that tomorrow never came. I haven't reupholstered it. I haven't patched it. I just dust it off once a week. That's enough. Sometimes I play our old records, Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong, not to enjoy the music, but to imagine her again in the kitchen, humming softly and turning to smile at me through the doorway. Loss, for the young, often comes like a sudden strike, but for the old, it's more like an uninvited guest, one who arrives, sits down, says nothing, and stays. Harold, my neighbor who used to bring me tomatoes every summer, he's gone. Sarah, the piano teacher from across the street, gone too. And Rufus, the old dog who followed me everywhere from porch to garden, he laid down for the last time last winter. My phone still rings, but these days it's mostly the pharmacy, the hospital, or a quick check-in from one of the grandkids just before dinner. They're busy. I understand. I don't blame them. But I miss the long conversations, the stories without any real conclusion, the bursts of laughter over things no one remembers the next day. Some afternoons I just sit on the porch, not reading, not listening to the radio, not doing anything at all, just sitting. Not because I'm sad, but because I'm still living with those who've left in my own way. Chapter 3. The presence of death, not frightening, but quiet and silent. I spent my entire life standing at the lectern. I used to talk a lot about death, as a period at the end of a long chapter in history. An inevitable ending, neat, orderly. I used to think that if I understood enough about life, about the laws of time and human nature, then when death came, I would be ready. But in truth, the death you read about in books and the death you quietly sit across from, they are two very different things. It doesn't scream. It doesn't make noise. It's not necessarily painful, despite what people often imagine. It simply sits there, silent, like a familiar shadow. It shows up in the mornings when you wake a little slower than you did yesterday. It's present when you come home from a doctor's visit with a result that says, "Nothing to worry about, it's just age." It follows me from the bedroom to the porch, from the hospital back to the living room sofa, like a companion who never speaks. I'm not afraid of pain. I've had my share: hip surgery, broken bones, nights of sleeplessness because of an irregular heartbeat. I'm not even afraid of the moment of going. Because I understand. We all eventually arrive there. But there's another fear, quieter and heavier. I'm afraid of being forgotten. Not in the dramatic way of no one will build a statue of me or no name etched in stone, but the ordinary kind of forgetting. No one will remember that I used to read the newspaper out loud every Sunday to call the family to breakfast. No one will bring up that I used to write handwritten letters to Elaine in the middle of the night just because I missed the sound of her voice. No one will retell a small story I once told, even just once, to my grandchildren. I had an old friend named Joseph Blake. We fought together side by side. He once saved my life in a moment I didn't think I'd survive. And yet, many years later, I stumbled across a black and white photo of Joe buried in a pile of old papers at an estate sale. No name, no note. No one left to remember. Just a forgotten face. I looked at that photo and felt a chill run down my spine. Not because Joe was gone, but because I realized maybe I'm the last person on earth who still remembers he ever existed. Since then, I've started telling more stories to the grandkids, even if they've heard them, even if they didn't ask. I don't tell them to teach anymore. I tell them so I don't disappear completely. I don't wish to be remembered forever. I just hope that, if one day I'm no longer here, someone still remembers that I once told them to tie their shoelaces tightly, that I once reminded them to say thank you when someone helped, that I used to sit quietly on the porch doing nothing at all, just listening to the wind and smiling. If even one memory of me still lives on in someone, then maybe I haven't truly left yet. Chapter 4. Meaning is to be fully present, not to leave something grand behind. I used to think that in order to live a meaningful life, I had to leave behind something truly grand. A book with my name on it, a lecture that someone would one day reference, some kind of legacy, enough for people to still remember me after I was gone. I used to chase after those things, spending hours writing manuscripts, turning down family gatherings just to finish a chapter that, in the end, no one ever read. Then one day, I realized the manuscript sat untouched in a drawer. The classroom I once taught in now has someone else standing at the front. My name, if still mentioned, was just a passing footnote. And in that empty space where there was no longer anything I had to do, I began to see more clearly. It turned out that meaning was never in the big things. It was in the way I made coffee in the morning and sat alone in the kitchen, quietly watching sunlight spill across the wooden table. It was in the sound of my grandchild laughing, still wobbling on her little bike. It was in Elaine's gentle touch as she passed me in the hallway. No words, just her presence. I used to lecture on Enlightenment philosophy, used to analyze what it meant to live a life of value. I used to think I understood life deeply. But now I know I was good at analyzing life, but I had missed actually living it. I wasn't there for my daughter's 8th birthday because I was busy writing a chapter I never published. I stood in the corner of my son's wedding, busy taking pictures. Instead of stepping onto the dance floor for a song with him, I told myself, I'll make it up next time. But some next times never come. These days, my phone doesn't ring much. My schedule has been blank for a long time. And yet, I've never felt life more clearly than I do now. I notice how the wind in June smells different from the wind in October. I sit on the porch, listen to the sound of birds calling in the distance, and feel my heart soften. I'm beginning to understand. It's not about doing more. It's about being fully present. If there's anything I regret, it's not that I didn't achieve enough. It's that I didn't stop sooner, to see that the little things around me were actually the most important. But today, I still have a choice. I can still pour a warm cup of tea, sit quietly, and listen to the laughter of children from the next room. I can still sit under the setting sun at the end of the day, just to feel something simple, that I am still here, that I am still alive. My dear friend, if you're still sitting there, listening to me until now, then perhaps somewhere within you, there's something deeply human stirring, like a gentle touch from memory, or a silence that never had a name. I don't have the perfect answer for growing old, nor do I have any secret to living without regret. All I know is this: we cannot hold back time, but we can choose how to live in the time we still have left. A little slower, a little more present, a little deeper in love, and a little more grateful, even when no one else is around. Because in the end, meaning doesn't come from how far we've gone, but from whether we've paused long enough to notice the beauty of the road we're walking. If today happens to be a day when your heart feels more tired than usual, your body a bit weaker, or your mind just a little heavier, then please remember, you are not alone. Out there are still people, like me, sitting on their porches, listening to the wind, remembering those they've lost, and learning how to live again, from the very beginning. As long as you can still feel the warmth of sunlight on your hands, as long as there's still one small thing left to smile about, then this life is still worth living for.